The gloves are off between Donald Trump and Ted Cruz. Trump accusing Cruz of stealing the Iowa Caucuses as all of the candidates head into New Hampshire. Ron Nehring is the California state chairman for the Cruz campaign. Ron, thanks so much for being with us on New Day this morning.
Good morning, Allison.
Donald Trump is saying that Ted Cruz committed voter fraud. Let me read to you a couple of his recent tweets on that topic. Donald Trump says the state of Iowa should disqualify Ted Cruz from the most recent election on the basis that he cheated, a total fraud. He then wrote, based on the fraud committed by Senator Ted Cruz during the Iowa caucus, either a new election should take place or Cruz results nullified. Ron, what's your response to these calls?
Well, I was just on an airplane yesterday flying to D.C. and watching the Twitter feed and watching Donald Trump have his Kylo Ren moment on Twitter. You know, we didn't know what he was going to do after, he was kind of, gracious in his initial concession. But look, Donald Trump has not been talked about for about 24 hours following the results. And like a child who's kicking his sister to try to get attention of mom and dad, Donald Trump is going to continue to say weirder and weirder things in an attempt to get the media attention back onto him. And that's exactly what he's been doing. The members of the Cruz crew, the thousands and thousands of volunteers for Ted Cruz in Iowa, delivered a stunning victory. That was a come-from-behind victory. The entire media reality distortion machine was coming down on Ted Cruz in those final days. And no one should be able to take that victory away from Senator Cruz and the thousands and thousands of Iowa voters who cast their ballots in a fair and square election and gave that victory not to Donald Trump, who guaranteed that he would win, but to Senator Cruz.
But, Ron, do you worry that some Iowa voters may have gotten some misinformation from your campaign?
Well, there's no indication of that whatsoever at all. As a matter of fact, going into the caucuses, this back and forth concerning what Ben Carson said or he was going to do or not going to do or go to Florida, change his clothes or whatever he was doing, out so late, and there's no indication at all that even a single Iowa caucus goer received that bad information or that any Cruz volunteers stood up and gave bad information whatsoever. And if that did occur, then it's incumbent upon the Carson people to say, no, that was a bad report, or that report didn't come out right, or that wasn't what we intended to say, or whatever, and to correct that. That's the back and forth of what happens in a political campaign.
If you did get some sort of information, if some information did come out that people were confused about the status of Ben Carson as they went into caucus and therefore changed their minds, then what would your campaign do?
Well, ultimately, the results have been certified. The election was fair and square, and there are now a total of 55 other states and territories that will hold votes and send delegates to the national convention. And this campaign is not over, so there is that opportunity. But at the end of the day, I think that in that fog of war and that where situational awareness, is moving back and forth in the final minutes before votes are counted, it's incumbent upon all the campaigns to share the information that they had. The Cruz campaign did the best job that it could sharing that information. The Carson campaign said some things that it probably ultimately shouldn't have said, and then we'll have another vote in New Hampshire in a couple days. I
mean, but your co-chair, Congressman Steve King, did put out erroneous information. I mean, are you suggesting that nobody in any of the caucuses was reading any Twitter feeds that night? They didn't have their cell phones with them?
Well, I took a look at what Congressman King had tweeted out. What he had said, he said it looked like Ben Carson was out, meaning to him, in his judgment, which in the judgment of a lot of other people who had taken a look at what the Carson campaign spokesman had said, which was kind of weird, that he was not going to go to New Hampshire and to South Carolina immediately following, as everyone else did. And there were a number of other press reports that had drawn the same type of conclusion, that something was perhaps going on here, and that's what occurred.
Well, sure. I mean, saying it's a little weird is different than saying, did say it's the equivalent of suspending. Too bad this information won't get to all caucus goers. And then his next tweet, Carson looks like he is out. Iowans need to know before they vote. Most will go to Cruz, I hope. So again, you're saying that you don't think that either of those tweets that they sowed any confusion among voters.
Look, I think that when you're at a national news outlet watching this remotely, and that Twitter is, carries a disproportionate view of reality, and that what was really happening in those individual precincts around the caucus. And it's not appropriate to try to take away the tremendous amount of work that had been done by all the campaigns, and to say that, well, the result was just reduced to a single, tweet or two. That's simply not fair, and that's not, honest reporting either. But let me also say that Ben Carson outperformed the polls as well. We saw that Ted Cruz outperformed the polls. We saw that Ben Carson outperformed the polls. The only top-tier candidate who didn't outperform the polls was Donald Trump, and that's because he didn't run a very good campaign in Iowa. Now, maybe things will change now, but that shouldn't be overlooked either, that Donald Trump did not run a good campaign, and he's trying to look for anybody he can blame other than himself, because he's not someone who takes responsibility. He guaranteed that he would win. He lost. Other candidates did better than the polls. He did worse than the polls, and, we saw what happens when Donald Trump doesn't get his way and he can't produce, and then he throws a fit.
Ron Nehring, thanks so much for sharing your perspective.